So fáilte Laoise Kelly.
Gur míle mágad.
So either Huva, Lynn, just it's an ITMA. It's brilliant to have you in the Irish Traditional Music Archive for this episode of Drawn from the Well.
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me. It's really exciting to be here, especially with these amazing treats here.
Yeah, you're like a kid in a sweet shop here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we get into the depths of Bunting and first edition copies and all the rest, would you mind telling us a little bit, just give our listeners a bit of an insight into your background as well, and how you grew up and how you came to develop into the harper that we all know and appreciate these days?
Yeah, I suppose my father collects music, and I didn't appreciate that growing up probably, but the likes of that P.J. Joyce first edition sat on the piano in amongst the piano grades, and it wouldn't have, I wouldn't have just checked a tune out in it. And I suppose my traditional stuff growing up was mainly maybe to whistle in primary school and that. And I suppose then kind of marching band towards the end of primary school, and then the harp came in just as I was finishing primary school. And then my first teacher was Anne-Marie Scanlon, and she was taught by the great Nancy Calthorpe. So she gave me fantastic classical technique, and I learnt reading music, which is in contrast today. Most of the harpers are learning by ear. But but the repertoire where I was playing didn't suit me. I was a tomboy, and these were very pretty songs. It was just at the end of the era of, we'll say, the heyday of Mary O'Hara and those very pretty songs with harp accompaniment rather than instrumentals on the harp. So I knew I didn't want to do that, but I didn't know what it was I wanted to do. So I probably didn't play for a while. And then I would have gone to sort of summer schools. The ones that were available at the time were, I suppose, Scollégse. And I remember once I went to Glencolmkill to Janet Harbison's harp school, and I remember she taught me Slieve Gallen. Oh. So that's one of the tunes that I've since found out is one of the tunes from this man, Hugh Higgins, that played in the Belfast Harp Festival 1792, and whose music, obviously, Edward Bunting notated.
You're a proud Mayo woman, and you're in your research for this. You're looking into Hugh Higgins, his repertoire, and we're lucky to have that some of that repertoire documented through Bunting and that. But could you talk to us a little bit about your interest in connecting with that Mayo tradition of harping, and in particular Hugh Higgins?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's always amazing to find out that there's always a Mayo man. There's always one somewhere. And like, of the 11 harpers that were in Belfast, Hugh Higgins was the only one from Mayo, and the only one as far south as Mayo. And and to see his repertoire, like I really love what he was playing. It's great, and he's got a great variety, like they all did. But so it's wonderful to say, God, we got this tune from him, and he's only up the road. He was from Chirawley, which is the barony of Chirawley, which is North Mayo. So you would have, it's from the north coast, Atlantic down. So you'd have Killala and Ballycastle down on the eastern side. You'd have Foxford, the Moy, basically up running north to Ballina, and Crossmolina would be in the centre of it. About 1,000 miles square. We don't know where exactly he's from, but it's an absolutely beautiful part of the country.
Can you give a little bit about the context? So in 1792 he travelled to Belfast, and before that he travelled to the Grenard Harp Festival gatherings as well. So
I suppose if you're looking at Higgins, it's very hard to look at him in isolation. You have to look at, I suppose, the wider context. So we wouldn't know a thing about Higgins, maybe just his tunes from Bunting, only for this other harper, Arthur O'Neill, and his memoirs were transcribed by Thomas Hughes, who was writing for Bunting, and he gave a great account of Higgins, saying he was blind, he was dressed quite dapper, and he had his initials embossed on his buttons made of silver. But then it's Arthur O'Neill who's given the story. So he said about my buttons had my initials embossed, but on the crest of the O'Neills, all on the button. And these lads are blind. But anyway, he's great stories, and you can hear Arthur O'Neill talking about Higgins quite fondly. So Arthur O'Neill's memoirs were taken down later, like after Belfast 1792. So he's looking back at his life. And he's speaking about, say, the Granard Harp Festivals began in 1781, then the following year, 82 and 85. And Higgins was present at all three of those. And
was there a little incident at the second?
Yeah. He didn't
one?
play at all. Apparently, took a huff.
Oh, yeah.
But I think it was because one of the judges was just invited to come up and be a judge because he didn't know anything about music. Yeah. So you can totally imagine that happening today. It was a competition, so it's good crack. Stories. Yeah.
Some things never change. If we think about harping in the late 19th century, what was Ireland renowned for its harping prior to that? What type of health or what type of place was the tradition in at that time?
I suppose the context for Belfast would be, and I suppose the question is, why Belfast? Belfast was the centre of the revolution at that time in the British Isles, and they were very influenced by, I suppose, what happened in America, independence, and the French Revolution seems to have hit home really with a group of men who included Henry Joy McCracken, Thomas Russell, Wolfe Tone, MacDonald, and Mary Ann McCracken, and they founded the United Irishmen. That was just in 1791. And I suppose at that time their driving force was social, economic, political independence, and to have
enlightened way of thinking, or
enlightened way of thinking, and equality.
Yeah.
You know, and equality for anybody from any religion.
Yeah.
Very forward thinking.
Still relevant
absolutely,
today.
But not only that, they were also culturally aware, and so much so that they knew the harp tradition was dying. And they sent out an advertisement that went right across the country to say, come to Belfast with your harp. And they employed Bunting. Now, Bunting was only a young man. He was born in 1773 in Armagh, but he had lived from about the age of 11 with McCracken's. Yeah. So he was a deep, close family friend, and grew up in that political sphere. And he was employed to take down the melodies at the Harp Festival, which happened between the 11th and 14th of July 1792. And outside was the celebrations for the Bastille, for the French Revolution. Like, it was an amazing time that it all happened. It was like a real amazing time in history. Yeah. But then he, not only was he taking the music down there, he was the first of the collectors to go out in the field, taking down, and he just spent the next, up till about 1807, travelling around the country. Yeah. Primarily in Ulster, but also a lot in Mayo. Yeah. And then he employed other collectors, of course, as well. Yeah, yeah.
And he's buried here in Dublin I think he died in 1843, but his three publications are in front of us here as well. And I know this is his first edition, so in 1797 it was published. There's sometimes debates over the date of publication, but
this is the first edition.
First edition here, yeah. So you might like to have a look at that. But
wow, Charity MacDonald, 1864, so at one stage.
Yeah,
beautiful. Oh my goodness. Even like always, I just think the title page is always so beautiful. Yeah, we should really. A thing to learn from these people, and the paper.
So, Bunting, in the fashion at the time as well, arranged these they were published for pianoforte, for piano playing. Where does that leave you as an interpreter of these collections now, in terms of how do you approach, say, tunes that you read here, so you have the melody on one hand, and then you've
accompaniment there in the left hand. Well, I suppose I'd be well aware, like everybody in the harp world, that this piano, even the style, if you were to sit at the piano and play it, is already out of fashion with what we would like to put on the piano. Very rich chord there, like a straight GBD chord. We rarely use it now. You would leave out your third because it's too rich against what's happening in the melody, because the melodies are so rich themselves, that it needs a sparser chord or an octave or something like that. So I don't pay much heed to it. I would look at it to see, knowing a lot more about now in the last recent years, say with the work of Simon Chadwick, and that sometimes he does have a little bit of the left hand he took down, because primarily Bunting took down the melodies, and then when he went to publish, there was no point in him publishing melodies. The point was to try and make a living, I suppose. Yeah. So he's selling them to maybe people who play piano. Yeah. Because
parlour music.
Yeah. So most of the harpers were blind. They're not going to be reading the tunes. And
they were thin on the ground at the time.
Absolutely.
Down to 11 at the Belfast.
Yeah.
And that caused issues for Bunting. I mean, he didn't get rich off this publication, despite it. This will never be out of print now, still going to be relevant, exactly. I would say 100, 200, 300 years time. But that Bunting, a lot of his tunes were plagiarised, and he was a while before
obviously we all know about Thomas Moore, and then Thomas Moore used the melodies in Bunting's collections and put his poetry to it, and then you have a little bit of, he didn't credit Bunting, but also Bunting was upset because sometimes the metre of the music didn't fit what he had written, or he might alter the melodies. Yeah. And sometimes he said you might be able to recognise the original melody. So I don't know, whatever people want to think about that, but Moore was very popular on the back of, he wasn't known as a poet, he was known as the Moore's melodies. Yeah. But the melodies he's using are these harp tunes. Yeah.
Bunting has quietly gone.
I've done a lot of work on,
on his.
Oh, the other thing to say would be that they're not all from Harper's.
Yeah.
You know, he collected from pipers, singers, fiddlers as well. So sometimes we think that it's all harp music. It's plenty of field recording there too.
By the time he got to 1840, he published a full treatise on harping and some of the finer details and the language in this. I find as a fiddle player, it's beyond my comprehension. But I'd love to get your thoughts on.
Yeah, well, it's great. Like, it's a rich treasure trove of names and the Gaelic names. Like the working language of all these harpers was Gaelic, you know, and they learnt through Gaelic. So they've these beautiful terms that we don't use that we should, like, reintroduce. There'd be no harm in, you know, something like that. They'd names for their strings and for their harmonies and their ornaments.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the ones. There's different kinds of Irish harp. So he has Clárseach, Kieran Critch, Crum Critch, Kieran Criftine Critch and Lub, you know, even parts of the harp, strings of the harp, and tunings to go with it. You know, it was very, like, it was a real, it's a monster body of work. Like, it's just... Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm looking at some of these intricacies here, like about, so Grace is performed by the treble on left hand.
I know, which of course, the left hand did the treble at the time. We've completely changed. We're this way around now. Yeah. It might have been to do with piano. I'm not sure why that happened, but yeah, they're amazing. And again, we don't use them enough. We use it, I suppose, a little bit. Say something like their activity of the finger ends striking upwards. You know, it's great detail. Like, and even fingering number there. Like your thumb is your number 1, 2, 3, similar to the piano. So it's labelled out exactly there, and they'd be very important for, especially somebody playing with a wire harp, because the sustain on a note compared to these ones, like the sustain is relatively short on these ones, but it would last much longer on a wire harp. So it'd be very important to damp as you went on to the next string, so they're not all overlapping. To give you kind of
But it certainly speaks to a really highly developed tradition of harping, doesn't it? Like
absolutely,
that, like this is, you know, I'd have a fairly skilled at sight reading, but this is a huge challenge. To
like
read,
say here, even these harmonies, they have, what's the name there they have on that? Like it's just like
bulls gone swelling out.
And then they're thirds, and then they have the next one is fourths.
Yeah, glass they're calling that. Yeah.
And then the octaves and there's something like there's just loads of beautiful terms. That's and Wakatu on Starry Do.
Starry Do, yeah.
Yeah. Did you see the Black Rogue or something? I'm not quite sure. But yeah, that's a cute little tune. I'm wondering why that isn't in the kind of wider tradition, because it's yeah, it's a cute one. You don't play it, no?
No, I don't. No. And your accompaniment to that as well, like in the left hand. Could you talk us through a little bit, like what's going through the mind how did you arrive at that?
Well, any of those tunes that are bouncing around, they're rich in melody, I would probably do less left hand. Let the melody sing out, you know. Obviously, we're a melodic tradition, but so anything I'm doing is enhancing what it is. And I suppose in the case of this tune, I've been doing wider research on Bunting for a project I'm doing with Tiernan O'Dinkin on the pipes, and he plays on a B set. So I'm playing them in E, playing that tune in E major, which I suppose is like G on the pipes. Maths homework. But so I'm using the 1 and 5. You get away with 1 5, and there's a 4 chord somewhere. But other than that, that's it. You know what I mean? It's very simple.
Yeah.
Quite simple. I'm very conservative, I think, probably with my left hand.
But it fits wonderfully to the character of the tune too. Yeah.
Maybe just imitating a little bit of the rhythm.
Yeah. To what extent, there might be a chance to talk about it, like when you're interpreting music from a archival or a manuscript source, and then as a contemporary artist yourself, where's the balance? Where's the freedom and liberty, and where's that dial between just sticking rigidly to what's on the sheet?
Yeah, well, I probably torture myself by that kind of thing, but inevitably I do stray from what I learned originally on the page. Not vastly, but you're always going to recognise what the tune is, but it's a longer process. Like, I've been doing an awful lot of work on Bunting and reading through tune after tune, and it takes so long for a tune to come off a page. If it was a jig or reel, you're straight into the rhythm, and it's easy. But where the pieces are airs, or just it says plaintive or slowly, or this is ancient or something, that you're having to tread lightly and till you get some sort of feel. And of course there's no phrasing, so you're interpreting phrasing yourself. And then sometimes I feel it gets to the end of the phrase and it's a crotchet and it goes on, and I'm thinking, no, that should be another 2 beats on that one or something. So I'll do that if I feel it, but I'd wait a long time before I'd let that change come in. So I find the process quite slow. I would take my time. It's very, you can't just speed it up because if you need to. And then you need to have it in playing it for a long time before it comes out naturally in the hands. Whereas if you just heard the tune once, it would make all the difference. It would, This year, with our Harp Festival in Achill, we invited 3 young harpers up in North Mayo from the exact area where Hugh Higgins is from, to look at Hugh Higgins's repertoire and see would they play his music. And one of them is Harry Lawler, who's a great singer, and I said, is there any of those that you might sing? And he goes, oh, are there words? And of course people probably aren't aware that a lot of the harpers did sing. And initially I suppose Bunting was obviously didn't have Gaelic, so he wasn't going to write down an awful lot of the words. And then of course that's how he brought Patrick Lynch in to take the words down. So the song, most of the Carolyn songs, tunes are songs. So it's great that Harry's going to sing to the Mabel Kelly.
Brings things full circle, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bhí sin do chreite lís míle bechas so tacta seachógan an taiscin seo.
Fáilte rós.
It's been a real treat. I hope you unearthed a few more things on Hugh Higgins in the years and months.
Loads more to go.
So go míle mágat.
Fáilte rós.
Kia be a fleshin andoha love yes for fwina kyan Isheven lum nar vigel vosto Qui go broin of your vetchir Kalyas the mahufan of fyan Akon eron Laoise Kelly Spishkan gasri mobla hevni chali jay the salayad in our kin near folk our foes starshina na quigis angry and gake the gruma rosa read labuna course and rogue me maglasha no hill Gerald of Malta Cor Hill Cura Cura Cololas Longo Bell Nila Ross Hugh Valona Kakota Shingenot Lante Mohe Spishkan gasri mobla hevni chali the salayad in our kin near our four starshina na quigis unri and gakin the gruma rosa read labuna course and rogue me maglasha Gerald of Malta Cor Hill Nail Cura Cura Cololas Longo Bell Nila Roslan Hugh Bralona Cocktail